Back in September of this year, Colin Kingsmill and I had a really, really interesting, fascinating actually, and I learned so much conversation about all things fear and how to master fear in your world, both professionally and personally. And we explored so many different topics and so many ways of becoming a little more mindful, a little more conscious of the world around you, and kind of how to then go within to explore the way you will then adapt and react to the world. And we thought we should hatch a little plan here right at the very, very end of 2023 to come back together and kind of just continue the conversation and just really explore how we can take this into next year. So welcome back, Colin.
Hey, it's so good to be here. I'm super excited. And yeah, it's great to be back. I didn't want to end our last conversation, so this feels like a perfect continuation of it. Let's hope I can meet your standards this time around too.
Well, you certainly did the last time, and I got a lot of feedback. I mean, this was why one of the reasons, obviously, the topic we're talking about or will talk about is so poignant for this time of the year. It really is. It's really critical, I think, for lots of people to reflect and then kind of project into next year how they're going to do things. But the feedback I had before was that, my goodness, doesn't Colin really talk sense? It was kind of just a sense I think people were getting that we don't have to complicate this stuff. And that was the real kind of takeaway for me was, we talk to lots of people, we read lots of books, we listen to lots of podcasts where it is complicated. There's lots of science behind this stuff. It's heavily researched. It's all kind of evidence and data backed. But I think the thing that I think people were getting from you, Colin, was that, but we can still keep this real. We can keep it really quite simple and just demystify things. So I'm hoping we can kind of, as you say, continue that level of conversation, because it just felt so powerful. And I think, both you and I felt that at the time, was that we were tapping into things that are so poignant for so many people. I mean, in the last few months, have you seen kind of things change? I mean, we've come to the end of a really hectic, chaotic, I guess you could call it, year. I mean, how's that kind of played out for you and your clients and the people you're connected to?
Yeah, I don't think it's gotten any better, given what is going on in the world around us. I think some of the challenges that are happening globally are affecting people even more than when you and I spoke last September, and in a negative way, right? Obviously, and one of the things that I actually had a pivot moment with a colleague about this very topic, because that person was feeling quite distressed about what is going on in the world and the news, and feeling really helpless, actually, so not only are we having to deal with our own selves and what's going on in our head and our stories and our work environments that can be challenging, the global context has gotten even more challenging since you and I spoke last. And what I was saying to her was, and it goes back to that first thing that I think I spoke to you about, is turn off the news and get informed, right? Because there is so much fear mongering out there, or not necessarily intentional, but you simply turn on the news, or you go onto social media, or you go onto X, or you go onto whatever channel you prefer to get your stuff. And there's a lot going on, and there's a lot that's negative. So I was saying to her, turn it all off, right? First of all, if you are really intent on understanding the subject more, then get informed. Dive into the history books, dive into the geopolitics, dive in and understand what's really going on over and above the clickbait that you might see on the news or on socials. But and I said to her, the notwithstanding everything that the world is going through, then you're going through, and maybe your teams and your leadership teams or your groups or your company, you've got to start internally at home with your own ecosystem, right? if you want to save the world or change the world, it's got to start right here, I think. And that really resonated with her. And I said, there's people down the street from you that are suffering, right? And there's all sorts of places in Canada where people are challenged financially, challenged with home-wise, challenged with addiction and things like that. So I was saying, bring it home, bring that challenge, those challenges home. But that's really what I've seen in the last few months is it's kind of gotten worse. It feels as though we have to really break before we can come into a greater sense of humanity. And my more spiritual friends are saying, well, we are entering the age of Aquarius, right? So be positive, but not easy, right? Not easy.
Is it, do you think? Yeah, because the way you've described that is, it feels that to do those deep dives, you've almost got to kind of create the time to be able to do it. So we're all super busy. We've all got stuff coming at us from all different directions, professionally and personally. And even though we're going through kind of holiday season and looking into kind of next year right now, one of the things I think for me that is quite poignantly coming through here is the fact that if we try to do these deep dives and really kind of educate ourselves on some of these things, then we almost have to do it with fewer things, because a lot of us are kind of taking that surface level view, aren't we, of a multitude of things. And it's really hard because, well, as Sonia, my wife, talks about, she just sort of describes it, there's a big soup. It's so many different flavors of things. It's all kind of moving around. It's very, very fluid, and it's almost like you can't grasp anything if you take that surface kind of social media style level. So are you kind of sort of hinting here that, to do, well, less is more. So to do fewer things, really kind of hone in on really what you feel is important, maybe more valuable to you or those around you, and really educate and upskill in those things rather than just try and do everything, because that feels as though it's adding more stress to the whole thing.
I completely agree with you. And I think it is adding more stress. And I think, less is more. I mean, it's an old adage, right? We've heard, at least you and I have heard it all of our lives. But I think it's kind of mission critical today, right? Because there is so much out there, like, there's so many ingredients in that soup, right? That you could end up really making a bad soup or eating a bad soup if you are consuming all of it, right? And how is that serving you, right? I would rather have an in-depth conversation on one subject, right? Whether it's climate change or conflict or immigration, whatever you want, right? But let's dive deep into it and have a real conversation, something that's substantive, something that has depth to it, something that we can then maybe have a dialogue or debate over. We don't necessarily have to agree, but I don't know. It just feels as though if we're just being, like you said, too busy and taking everything that comes at us, right? You might as well be in a candy store then, right? It's just like the candy store of ideas. But the sugar rush and the dopamine end pretty quickly after you have the candy, right? So do you want to have some candy, or do you want to have some roast beef or whatever? If you're vegan, have something different. But like, I don't know. I do think it's a choice. Decide, do you want to be busy and having all these things coming at you, or do you want to dive deep and think about it? And I don't think dive deep necessarily means, read a 400-page book on, I don't know, being trauma informed and compassionate inquiry. It doesn't have to be that, right? But I do think that you can turn down the busy, and you can turn down all those things being thrown at you, and turn down the stress and the fear, right? By stopping, acknowledging that it's bothering you or something's eating at you. And I call it doing an inventory of the stories you're telling yourself, right? Or the stories you want to listen to. But decide, right? I think feels like we're entering an era of discernment, you know. You kind of see it too in like long form podcasts and the sort of the antithesis to TikTok, right? Somebody doing a 3-hour podcast, you're like, all right, well, they must be diving into it. So, yeah.
So it kind of plays out professionally and personally then, doesn't it, here? Because describing this again, it's that time of year where professionally teams are sitting around, or if you're in a micro business, you're sitting there with yourself trying to figure out where are my priorities going to be for next year. If it's a personal thing, it might be a house move, or it could be you're going to be, I don't know, taking that vacation that you've been longing for years, but now is the right time and you've been saving, etc. So you're kind of going to really sort of double down on that. To me, though, there's one thing that kind of comes into this mix if we start to strip things out, either professionally or personally. It is this, and again, we're going back to social media again, I guess, the FOMO, the fear of missing out. Because if I start to say no to things, or I start to say, no, I'm prioritizing this stuff, but the other stuff I'm just going to let go. What if I get that wrong? What if I've chosen the wrong things? What if something actually that I've said no to is like really important, or it comes to bear actually in a few months' time, and oh no, I didn't invest in that. I've left that in 2023. As we go into 2024, it became a thing and I ignored it.
Right.
There's a risk with all this stuff, isn't there?
Yeah, sure. Absolutely. Embrace it is my right. Yes, there is a risk, but there's also an opportunity, right? So if you are making some decisions and planning right now, and you do have this sort of fear of missing out, I would like to flip that for you and say, what are the possibilities of missing out? Right? Because I think you and I spoke about it last time about this idea of your allocation of resources and how you fuel yourself, right? And how full is your fuel tank? Where do you want to spend your fuel, right? Because you have a finite amount of it and a finite amount of resources, or at least we tend to anyway. Where do you want to spend that, right? And if you are spending it on worrying about missing out, ask yourself, how much fuel is that worrying taking, right? And wouldn't it be more useful to spend that on unlimited or unleashed possibilities? That's kind of, fear of missing out. Okay, what? So what? You missed something. But that might have given you an opportunity to see something else, see something new, try something different, expand your horizons, work on your mission, work on your purpose. So, clutching your purse on that kind of stuff, I think it's a bit reductive. Sorry, maybe I might be too forceful for your audience, but
say it how it is, Colin.
Seriously, what does it matter?
We need to hear this stuff right now.
If you make a mistake, it's a learning tool, right? So I also think, we judge ourselves a lot, right? We judge ourselves in such a short time frame, So you're planning January right now, or you're planning 2024, and you have to get this and this and this done by that, and these are your objectives and things like that. And if it doesn't happen in this sort of tightly quantified time frame, then we beat ourselves up. And I'm saying, chill out a little bit. We live in very complex times. You're making a judgment call that you actually really don't know, right? You don't know if what is happening to you right now, or what just happened to you, or what might happen to you in the months to come and the year ahead. If you judge it on such a short time scale, you run the risk of misjudgment, because there's that great Buddhist saying, right, that sometimes the thing that you don't, I forget what the exact words are, but when you don't get what you want, it's the greatest thing that could have happened to you, right? So I'm like, chill out. Don't be so judgmental on yourself. Expand your time frame, and fear of missing out, flip it to what are the possibilities, right? That's
so
how.
So if I kind of took this on board then and started to do this, so I'm going to think from a really practical sense here, and as you know, I do play with these kind of things anyway, but let's think sort of theoretically, let's say I've not done this before, and I'm coming to this and thinking, okay, this sounds really interesting. So if I stop storytelling to myself, if I
Mm-hmm.
stop spending some of that energy
Mm-hmm.
in kind of trying to figure stuff out,
Yep.
telling stories of the what if, the maybe, or start attending to some of the should items rather than the really must do items. So all of
Mm-hmm.
those things that are kind of, yeah, counterproductive, should we say.
Sure.
I'm kind of actually then, if I take all those things out, I'm kind of creating more energy in lots of ways, aren't I? Because I'm not spending it or wasting it. I'm almost leaving stuff in the tank that I can then use elsewhere. Is that right?
Exactly. So the trick to do, if you are, planning the year ahead and thinking of the future, but there is an element of fear of missing out, or some dis-ease or discomfort. What you want to do is do an inventory of all of those narratives and all of those stories. Like, write them down on a piece of paper or two, or however however much you need, but get them out of your head and get them onto a piece of paper. Okay. That's the first thing you want to do. Inventory. Okay. Because a lot of us go through the day, and what do we have? 70,000 thoughts go through our head a day, something crazy like that. A lot of us go through the day, and we'll have those 70,000 thoughts, but we'll have them with no awareness. Okay. So those thoughts and beliefs and stories and narratives go on all day long, right in the back of your head, and they cloud your vision, they cloud your judgment, they cloud your decisions. So I think we spoke about it last time too. There's like this, it's like looking through opaque glasses, right? You're not seeing clearly because you got a bunch of stories in your head. Now, so what I'm saying is, create an inventory of them, right? And then as you look at them, right, you can go one at a time, just go through each one. That's why we're saying this is kind of easy. You don't have to spend years and books and Tony Robbins and everybody else in the space. Acknowledge that something is not right. Do an inventory of the stories that are going on in your head, and then one by one decide which ones are serving you. So which ones are filling your fuel tank, right? Because you might have some beliefs that are working for you, and fear, you want to eliminate fear from your life, right? Because fear is also an instinctual thing, fight or flight. There's times that it's useful, but acknowledge it, inventory it, and systematically go through and decide which one's serving you and which one's not. The ones that aren't serving you, the stories and the beliefs that aren't serving you, then the work to do is to really just go in and understand the origin of them. Where are they coming from? Is it in the past? Most likely it is. Often it's small t childhood traumas, or things that have remained with you that you're holding on to. But if you can acknowledge and you can inventory and you can decide what is serving you and what is not, understand the origins of them, that should, that will, I've seen it, that will give you that space, that freedom for your fuel tank to use those fuel cells on, your mission and your purpose and your possibilities, and that sort of unlimitedness that you and I have spoken about in the past. But if you don't, all that energy and thinking and thoughts and stories, they hold you down. It's like being chained down, right? So yeah.
So if I'm doing this then, so if I buy into
Mm-hmm.
this idea and just think,
Yep.
oh, that would be nice,
Mm-hmm.
that would be really helpful, that'll give me some clarity.
Mm-hmm.
Do I begin with professionally, or do I begin with personally, or do I begin with just what comes into my head first? Because some of these things could be little things that are kind of in the moment, so they're nagging at me
Yep.
today, but they're
Yep.
not what you might term strategic for my life or my work. So the
Mm.
bigger kind of ticket stuff that has a bigger impact, it might not have cropped up over the last month or something, but it could be there's a looming kind of figure in the past that is huge. But I actually get distracted by the little stuff that just, oh, he said or she said yesterday. And that kind of then distracts me. I mean, well, where do you begin? Do you begin with the big stuff or the urgent stuff? Or because it's complicated, isn't it?
It can be complicated. I think you begin with whatever comes into your head first, right? And get it out of your system, get it out of your head, get it onto paper where you can actually see it, right? And so there's a couple of parts to your question. I think it's really difficult today to distinguish between personal and business, or personal and professional, and that's why we also created Whole Human Coaching. I'm going to plug the coaching business, because I don't think you can divide those two things, and I think that's probably one of the challenges and one of the problems with our present moment in time, is that we've I don't know how we got here, but we tend to see those two as very divided. This is my personal life and that's my professional life. And I'm saying, nah, they're one thing, right? It's you as a whole human, and the stories that you're telling yourself, they're going to cloud both of those things. I don't think you can really go to the office and say, I'm going to switch off this human and then I'm going to turn on this professional human and be a different person. That's not living in integrity. So that's a whole other topic that you and I can address in the spring, if you like. But so I wouldn't divide them, and I would just start to document as much as possible. Right. And not necessarily, don't even quantify the stories as big or large or small or challenging. Just get them out of your system, get them documented. But there's something else about what you said that I think is interesting. And you mentioned distraction, right? In this process, sorry, I didn't mean to do the thumbs up thing by mistake. In the process, you want to make sure that the distraction isn't a coping mechanism to keep you away from who you really are, right? Because in the world that we live in, distraction and attention deficit and ADHD and all these other things can be distractions and coping mechanisms to not confront the main story that you need to address. So be careful about the distraction. I think that's a warning signal, right? Busy, 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 and distracted all of the time are warning signals that, or a coping mechanism to keep you away from that essential narrative deconstruction that you want to be doing, right?
That's good. And I can certainly relate to that. One of the words that I stripped out, I used it right at the start of this conversation, but intentionally, and it was very clearly intentional when I used the word busy. And it's an interesting one, because I've stripped that out of my narrative about 3 years ago, decided it does not serve me as a word. It's a really unhelpful word. It kind of clouds the way that I'm positioning what I've got to do and what I've done. And it just kind of makes me feel like I'm running around, not grounded, not really achieving anything, but being busy. And so I've decided, actually, it's not a word. So I can say I'm full. I can say I'm back to back. And I often find myself saying that phrase. So meetings are back to back, or tasks are back to back, or commitments are, full. But I never use the word busy, because I feel that is something that is a word that means, well, one, I'm probably out of control with my situation. I'm being subservient to a lot of noise, a lot of chaos, and it really is not me on peak performance. But also, it doesn't feel right. Just from the internal use of that word, it just feels, it's just too random energy, if I could call it that. I've never used that phrase before, but am I making myself clear here? That it kind of just feels I'm not centered. Well, let's just say I'm not centered if I use the word busy, because it really doesn't serve me. I mean, are there other words that you would identify that you can sort of say that some of your clients maybe use, or is it a similar kind of thing? Is this the problem? Is busyness the problem here?
I think it is the problem. I love that you're not using the word anymore, especially for your sort of own persona. I think it's precisely the problem. And specifically, it is our culture and our society, at least here in the West. For some reason, it's like become a badge of honor to be busy, right? I mean, and WTF, like what, like how is, it's not serving us. So, but what has been created is this myth that your self-worth is tied to how busy you are, right? So we have been led to believe that if you are busy, that's a good thing. Busy equals productive, equals contributing to society, has a whole bunch of connotations. But I think we should really be start a movement to end busyness, right? Because you're totally right. I mean, a phone line should be busy, right? We should not be busy, and I agree. It means you're off center. It means you're off kilter. It means you're probably not nourishing your body or your mind or your soul and the people around you, and not paying attention to them, much like how we started our conversation about do you want to have a junk food or do you want to have real food, right? And busy. I don't know when did it become a badge of honor. I'm not quite sure, but probably in the 80s when everybody was being a yuppie, right?
I think that's certainly when I first identified with it. It was one of the very early roles that I had in my career. I can remember, I won't mention the organization because they're a different style of organization now, but they still are there, where people used to leave their jacket on the back of the chair. I'm sure you've had examples or heard these kinds of stories, but they used to leave the jacket on the back of the chair in the early part of the evening so that any colleagues would think, oh, they're still somewhere in the office, they must be in a meeting. But the person had actually gone home, and we were all doing it. I put my hands up and say, I did it too, because if you hadn't left your jacket on the back of the chair, it was like, oh, he's gone, she's gone.
I'm sorry.
It's frightening, really, that we fell into doing that.
Yes, but there's all sorts of virtue signaling that goes on today, right? About in that same family of leaving your coat on the back of your chair to demonstrate what, right? To demonstrate that you are, I don't know, a good person, a productive person. We see that a lot with teams and leaders and people that I work with and we work with. This incredible drive to sort of represent that you are busy and you are doing, and that makes me laugh so much, because I think I did the same thing. Leave your coat, show that you're, get to the office early, or send that text at 6 a.m. or at 9 p.m. or whatever. It's just, I think it represents an old era, a paradigm that we, you and I and people like us should collectively try and end. And when my sort of more spiritual friends say, oh, we're entering the age of Aquarius, I'm like, great, good. It is time to reclaim your humanity, time to reclaim who you really are, time to, I don't know, have your true colors shine, as opposed to, that kind of vacuous virtue signaling for what, but I get it. I get it. We live in a, or we have lived in a culture that hasn't been conducive to humanity and Mother Nature and a lot of other things, which are, again, maybe that's a summer topic, but
I know we're adding the topics up here, aren't we, Colin? We're creating a whole series of these. It's great.
Sorry about that.
But, no. It's all for good. It's all for good. I mean, is it then that the whole thing here? I mean, again, looping back into the point of the conversation is this kind of reflection on the year, projection into next year, just kind of alignment and grounding and sort of settling in. Is it this more effective use of time then? I mean, it's a rhetorical question, really. Is it a more effective use of time? So if we don't want to be busy, if we don't want to be committing to things that aren't serving us or those around us, if we want to take a little bit more time for some quality reflection, it feels like time is the commodity here that we have to be very carefully protecting, nurturing, investing well. So not even spending time doing things, but investing our time doing things so that there's a return. Key difference with that word. And again, that's another little word I've been playing with, is I don't spend time on stuff, I invest time. I don't get it right all the time. And everybody listening to this will know that, they might have heard this a number of times and say, Neil, you've been talking about this for a while. You haven't really mastered this, have you? And the honest truth is, no, I haven't, but I'm just conscious it's there. I know that there's something in this. What do you think?
Oh, 1000%. I think, I think we forget how precious life is and what a miracle it is that you and I are standing and breathing, or sitting and breathing, right? And again, it's a little bit part of this myth that we may have been sold, or this package that we might have been sold, that we're going to be around for a long time, and you don't know that. And I think it's important to be grateful for every breath that you have, because you might not have the next one, right? And if you treat life like that, gratitude for every breath, gratitude for waking up, gratitude for just being able to have a conversation like this. I mean, that is an incredible mathematical miracle. You and I are specks of dust spinning around at 1,600 kilometers an hour on a little rock, going around a big shiny thing, and we know nothing about what's going on. So, yeah, time and your health are such precious commodities, and our culture seems to have led us to believe that they're both taken for granted. And and if you haven't mastered it, that doesn't matter. But your intention is that you want to make it precious, as it is. Time. Wow.
I was going to say, are we tapping into something here then, Colin, that, again, some people listening to this will be, as we've said, planning and thinking about next year. Are we tapping into then a whole new currency for 2024? So rather than, okay, on my manifestation chart, I want a new flashy car, or I want to make this number of dollars, or I want to do this or this or this. Are we tapping into a whole different currency of, well, both, I guess, measures of success, but actually something that would be a life indicator, I guess, so that by the time we get to next year's review point, we can look back and say, that was a very different year. It had gratitude in it. I invested my time. I did so few things, but those things that I did, wow, did they make a difference to me and those around me? And those become the things that we focus on in our, let's still use the word planning, but it feels different, doesn't it? This is so much closer to home. It's internal, it's meaningful, it's purpose-driven, it's value-led. It's all those things that we've been kind of, I guess, evangelizing over the years. And yet it just feels, could this be that moment?
If people are listening, I think it may be that moment for them, right? I think it requires you or your listener asking, what is the purpose of and maybe that's a good thing to leave everybody with. Like, obviously it's important to have goals and objectives and ideas and ideals and where you want to get to. And I speak about that all the time. Like, where is the destination that you are creating, right? So that, I do believe that's important. But I think what your listeners might want to do is ask themselves, is it the car or the house or the bag or, whatever you want to buy? What is the underlying intention of that? Why do I need that? What is it specifically for, right? It's not just to drive fast, right? Or to, have a fancy piece of something on your body. Like what is the real intention behind it, right? And if you can answer that honestly to yourself, and you might make a different decision. You might not, right? You may want, a Porsche, and because you love speed and adrenaline and you love washing cars or whatever. It doesn't matter, right? There's no judgment there, but understand the essence of what you're looking for. And I think if you can understand the essence of what you're looking for and the why underneath it, right? And then you match that up to something I totally agree with you on is think about return on humanity, think about return on life, think about return on humans, think about return on love, think about return on community, think about different ways to measure success. And I think that's the era that we are going into. Return on investment, return on equity, those are all great, but they represent the past, right? And the past over the last 70 years has been incredible. We've had the most abundant time in history, but it feels as though we are entering a new age of measuring differently, I guess, is what I would say. So yeah, ask yourself the why. Why do you need it? What is it for? What is it feeding? Again, I always go back to this fuel cell and the energy and what is it, what's it feeding, right? What is it giving you? How is it impacting the world, right? How are, and your purpose and your mission here, and measure it differently. I think we're ready for that new age. Sorry, the pun on new age, but the new era.
And it does feel like that, doesn't it? And I think if somebody's listening to this and thinking, oh, I thought I had it all worked out what I was going to be doing next year, and even if 2 or 3 little moments here have kind of helped to stimulate, maybe I just need to reshape it or just reflect on what I thought I wanted, that deeper why, the reasoning behind the targets, the plans, the ROI that you're looking for. It's like, yeah, but why? But why? Going deeper and really questioning that feels like a much more profound, detailed, but much more meaningful way of doing this, because it is very easy just to do same again next year as we've done this year because it worked this year, and almost that surface level reflection and then justification for, yes, I'll just do a bit more and I'll grow and I'll be more successful. But actually what you've described there is something that I think for some people listening to this will have actually hit them both in the heart as well as the head. And that, to me, that's when you know it's really working, is because you can feel it. You're not just thinking it.
Right.
That would be such a great way to move into next year, wouldn't it?
Well, I think we've seen enough of what, quote unquote, the old paradigm of success brought us, right? And abundance. And if we look at mental health, if we look at illness, if we look at dis-ease, if we look at loneliness, if we look at any of the markers of success, the vast majority of people aren't there. And I think it's because we were sold a bill of goods about quote unquote success that isn't healthy for us. So yeah, bring it on. A new paradigm of success, a new paradigm of living in this world, right? And truly participating in it, right? So you could sit back and say, I'm going to buy another lazy boy chair and make an addition to my house, and that might be enough, and that's fine. But if there's something inside of you that is niggling at you, it's time to listen. So and I think if anybody's on the other end listening to this podcast, they probably are going, okay, well, there's more, right? What is it? What's going on? So yeah, dive deeper, dig deeper, ask yourself why, ask yourself the purpose of everything, and make it all intentional. And then I think if you can do that, and not just have another goal or another milestone, for the wrong reasons or the old reasons or the reasons of the past paradigms. 2024, new year, new start, new you. Make it impactful.
And so somebody saying and thinking, yeah, I want this. I really want this. They will need some guidance, probably. They will need some coaching. They will need some assistance and help. And I know a number of people reached out to you last time in September as a result of our conversation. So I'm having a feeling here that you might get a little bit of an influx here of people saying, Colin, can you talk me through that a little bit again? How should they kind of make that connection with you? Where should they go?
Do you know, I'm all over the map on the internet. So I'm on Instagram. You can find me there. You can find me at colinkingsmill.com. You can find me at wholehumancoaching.com. So I'm pretty easily findable in those spaces. And, we can have a conversation online. We can have a conversation any which way you like. But I love having these conversations with people. So yeah, let's stay in touch.
Brilliant. Again, Colin, I mean, you've absolutely done. We set the target. Let's see if we can make this as meaningful and as helpful to everyone as the last time. And I think we've gone beyond. Well, you've
good.
Good.
I'm glad.
I'm just here listening to your wisdom, so it's easy for me.
We're coming back in the spring and the summer too, right? I forgot to write down what we're coming back.
We are indeed. I've got to listen back to this to find exactly what those topics were. But some people will be noting this down, and we will come back and go deeper on those topics. And it'd be very interesting to see actually how, when we're practicing what we're preaching, how we feel about where we are at that point as well. So maybe we do a little review of how our journey's going actually as part of this, because it is stuff that we're doing. We're not just talking this stuff, we're actually playing on this journey too, everyone. So I think that could be quite interesting in the spring.
Yeah, I would love to. I'm a big believer in not just broadcasting, or pushing something out. So let's have more conversations, and I'm an open book, as you know. I'll talk about anything. So
that's brilliant. Yeah, it's been so good. Yeah, I always love our conversations. So
and have a brilliant start to 2024. This is pretty exciting. We're recording on the solstice, or the eve of the solstice. So impactful. It's great.
It's great. It's all about the timing. It's all about investment of time. So we're going to go away and reflect and do our thing too now. So I shall let you go, Colin, but we'll catch up again in the spring. Thank you so much again.
Great. Yeah, good to see you. Thanks, Neil.